Everybody, my name is Miraj. I'm currently working at ICR as an ESG associate. So we help a lot of public companies create these ESG disclosures, which is environmental, social, and governance reports. And a lot of the companies that we work with are in the fintech space or recently IPO'd or SPAC. And so excited to talk about fintech and what that means and how it's kind of correlated into some of the ESG concepts that I work on every day.
Now we're coming down here and we're asking, okay.
So yeah, I can get started like talking about in general what fintech is and kind of why, how my experience at Bentley kind of helped me through that process. So I graduated last year with my bachelor's in corporate finance and accounting and sustainability. And I also did my master's in finance, but I minored in CIS, which was really helpful as I entered into the kind of the workforce, because one of the most helpful parts of the CIS minor is that you work with a lot of different data sets. You kind of understand the data flow. You understand a lot of the emerging technologies that you're going to be working with on a daily basis, like cloud databases, doing a little bit of coding here and there. So I think it was a really useful skill, even as a finance guy, to have that kind of skill set coming in. And with the emergence of a lot of fintech companies, I know everyone's excited to kind of go work at the next big fintech unicorn. But one of the biggest things that I think fintechs in general do is they increase accessibility, which is really helpful for a lot of folks. One of the biggest areas that, how it ties into the ESG world is that social aspect and the topic of financial inclusion. So a lot of the fintechs that we work with at ICR kind of focus specifically on like that financial inclusion piece. And we're helping them kind of create their narrative around how their technology actually allows a broader scope of people to utilize financial services, whether that's online banking, whether that's acquiring a personal loan, just a wealth of credit opportunities that are out there that previously weren't possible due to traditional banking. So that's really important. Look at Robinhood, for example. They allow a variety of people to.
I'm used to the shoes at work and after the backpack hold.
Sorry, I couldn't hear. Was that a question?
No.
Oh, okay. So you look at.
Yeah. Andre, can you?
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna mute it here because there's some background noise.
Sure. So if you, like I was talking about Robinhood, for example, if you look at the things that they're doing, including creating a lot of access for a variety of people to get into the investment world, whether that's through trading marginal shares, whether that's through trading just maybe $50, a month, whatever it is, that's really helpful. And that's increased a lot of opportunities in terms of creating financial access. And they also put out an ESG report this year where they kind of talk about a lot of those things, how their technology is really transforming the next generation of wealth, which is really cool. I think one of the things that I wanted to do coming out of Bentley was to find a role that allowed me to make an impact with my business background. And I think a lot of Bentley students also hold that same thought, is that, while they enjoy business, they want to, venture out into great opportunities. They also want to try to have an impact on the work that they do. I think a lot of fintechs out there make that possible. I can stop here and see if there's any specific questions about, fintech in general. What would you like me to kind of cover during this conversation here outside of that?
Let's throw in pictures online. There we go. Okay, let's start with Nick online. You want to introduce yourself and tell us if you have any questions about that you want to make sure we get covered today. Then we'll go to the people in the room.
Not at the moment, no. But if I have a question, I'll ask it.
What class you in?
Oh, I'm just here on my own. I'm taking some CS classes right now.
And so what's your interest in fintech?
I was originally majoring in finance, but I'm considering switching to computer science. But I've taken enough classes to have a minor in finance, so I figure fintech is the best of both worlds pretty much, with computer science and finance. So just here to learn more about that.
Awesome, thank you. And you guys?
I'll read it first.
Oh, sure. My name is Albert. I'm a finance major and actually a graduate student. My interest in fintech would be, I'm from Uganda, and Uganda is developing a lot in terms of fintech. We have something called mobile money that people use to send money to each other or pay for stuff, which is quite new. And that's been kind of supported by like the rise or like the betterment of like data. Actually, I think our data was better than the US data before they switched to like the 5G. So my interest would be like, how can you apply it to like countries outside of the US, or how can it be beneficial?
Yeah, for sure. That's a really great topic. And I want to tie that back into the realm of like ESG. I'm not sure, and a lot of you guys are familiar with ESG is, but it's typically a new, it's an older type of investment style that's gained a lot of popularity over the last couple of years. It's called environmental, social, and governance investing. So it's when your typical investors, your Fidelities of the world, your BlackRocks of the world, they take a more wholesome approach to how they evaluate companies that they're invested in. And they don't care just about, the fundamentals. Obviously, you want to invest in strong, fundamentally, profitable companies, but you also want to see what type of stakeholder impact that they might have through their environmental impacts, through how they treat their employees, how they care about diversity, equity, and inclusion, having a strong governance force. And one of the biggest things that's growing especially within the fintech world, is the idea of financial inclusion, like you mentioned. In countries outside of the US and a lot of emerging countries, fintech really allows those broader groups of people to access finances, access credit, access investing in a way that they haven't been in the past. And so that ties into a lot of different industries that are out there. Like you mentioned, that country had better infrastructure than the US at one point, or they might still even have better infrastructure than the US in terms of providing data capabilities. That's really important. And so there's a lot of companies that are out there that are working just for that cause, to go into these emerging markets and put in the infrastructure in place so they could have high-speed data at all times. And so they can allow people in those countries to access their mobile banking. There might not be physical banks. It might not be possible to have that kind of physical retail space. And so they can do everything online. If you look at, blockchain and how that's taking shape across the world, that's really another area to look to. I know there's somebody on the call here that's kind of has a finance background, switched to CS. I think those opportunities for a lot of people that are focused or passionate about fintech, is that's how they can get themselves into these emerging companies, is to really have a strong handle on financial networks, financial institutions, but also being able to kind of understand the massive amounts of data that you need to kind of process to make some of those connections is really important. And in developing markets specifically, I think fintech in general will allow a lot of people to make a lot of progress in the next couple of generations and really spread the wealth. And I hope that's something that a lot of you guys here at Bentley are passionate about as well.
If I know Bentley is considering beginning a fintech major, what courses do you think would absolutely need to be part of it?
Yeah, I think in general, I think for people that are, for that fintech major, I think having obviously the fundamentals of finance, your 305, your 306 is really important. I think those are kind of fundamental courses, but I think the coding aspect is really important too. So you want to make sure that students have a good grasp of how to take, how to write Python code, how to use SQL. I think SQL is one of those really popular financial coding languages that a lot of firms really like to highlight, especially as you guys go through the interview process. And if there's job descriptions that look for SQL and you have some experience on it, a lot of the interviews that I did when I was looking for full-time work, they really highlighted that SQL aspect. Like, oh, you know how to code. So that's really, really great if you have something like that on your resume. So obviously having courses tailored to that. But one of the other things is just topical based. If you look at kind of the growth of fintech firms, a lot of them have to do with banking. So understanding financial institutions, that'd be an amazing course to have there. Another one would be a few law courses, given the nature of what fintechs are doing, how much data that they're handling, the data privacy risk that could be associated with it. having a course that covers those kind of topics would be immensely helpful for someone that's entering the fintech space. And finally, I think like insurance tech is another big thing that I've seen, especially at our firm. We have a lot of companies that are in that space, and just understanding, how is it that these insurance technology companies are providing additional care and additional access to people, which is really important, but also understanding the, the financial implications of financial contracts, insurance contracts, things like that. I think that's kind of where, if you guys are, currently working through the curriculum for this major, I think those are a great place to start.
We're beginning to consider. Are we muted? Okay.
I can hear you.
Okay, cool. I know we're beginning to consider that, and I know that a lot of the courses that you've mentioned, especially the database courses, the Python courses, and the finance courses are certainly on the list. So it's good to hear the other areas that might be electives along the way to major like that. Did you take Python here?
I did take Python here.
Useful?
Oh yeah, I mean, it was, for me, taking Python was my first coding language that I learned at Bentley, outside of, taking the CS213 HTML course. But Python was one of the first like coding practices that I had, and it was really helpful. I think just it gets you into that problem solving mentality that I think you need to have, regardless of whatever you go into after Bentley, whether it's in the fintech space, whether it's consulting, whether it's at, a singular at a company, working in a finance team, strategies team. I think just being able to think outside of the box was really helpful. And then just like the collaborative aspect of, working with different, I took it halfway through the pandemic. So a lot of our work kind of transitioned to kind of teamwork, which was really helpful to kind of see how other people view the same problem. Working together to kind of solve those problems was really helpful. But I think the one thing I would take away from Python is just having that strong fundamental understanding of, how to write basic code, how to create some, basic problems was super helpful. One of the things I wish I could have done is probably taken more advanced Python class to see how, that could evolve. I think that'd be another class to explore as you work on potentially developing a fintech course.
What are some of the things that so the kinds of problems that you work on now on a day-to-day basis?
So right now, it's a little light on the data. We're working with a lot of companies that are in the early stages of reporting on ESG. So a lot of the quantitative aspects aren't there for them. But I could see this role evolving into taking, mature companies and taking the mass amounts of data that they have, whether it's they're on their workforce, energy consumption, water consumption, whatever that may be, and synthesizing that into digestible, metrics to include in the reports. So whether that's taking a large database of all their retail holdings, getting all the various, waste, energy, water consumption of those places, condensing it into a single metric that, not only that they want to put into the reports, but a lot of rating agencies use to kind of grade companies on their ESG profile. So that's kind of where the ESG world is trending towards, is they want more data from these companies, and currently companies don't have anything to disclose because they haven't monitored in the past. That is another space where I've seen a lot of fintech companies starting to emerge, is to create ESG software to kind of make the reporting aspect of it easier for their clients.
Cool. What other companies might students look into if they were looking for a career in this area?
Yeah, I think there are tons of different companies that come to mind. I know one thing that I think probably a lot of Bentley students are interested in is blockchain, cryptocurrency. Obviously, Block, previously known as Square, would be an amazing company to work for, given how focused they are on integrating cryptocurrencies into the mainstream, as well as obviously their normal digital banking products, such as the Cash App, which I think a lot of people are familiar with. So that'd be an awesome company to work for. there's a lot of fintech companies like Stripe that are out there that are looking to recently, I think they're about to go public. That would be a great opportunity to work for. But also like there's just a bunch of startups that are still in the early stages of creating their products. I know a few Bentley students that have gotten into that startup environment and they really like it, just because it really makes them think outside of the box. And not only are you working on a finance team, but you're also working in marketing, product creation, working with legal. So there's just a lot of different experiences that you can have through this experience. So yeah, I think there's not just one or two companies that come to mind when it comes to fintech, given how popular it is. But I think anytime you have the opportunity to work for a company like that, I think you should definitely do your due diligence and, you know, leap into that opportunity if possible.
So you mentioned SQL. So for instance, I guess you'd use it to manipulate data and like make it useful. So how would you use SQL for instance?
Yeah, so for SQL, it's kind of similar to what I was talking about with, you know, taking a lot of company data, whether that's on environmental data, it could be also social data if you wanted like, you know, break out their workforce data. So if you want to look at the number of employees that they have broken down by gender, by age group, by role group, things like that. That's where a lot of this like kind of just very basic understanding of how to do a little bit of coding can make your life a lot easier. You know, it keeps you away from making you know, difficult pivot tables in Excel or trying to comb through that way. So just having that introductory knowledge into SQL and kind of how databases work is super helpful. But I think just in general, when you go through, like for me, the CIS minor was more of just helping me expand my knowledge base and kind of really develop a problem solving mindset that I think is really applicable to any role.
What was it? Was there anything about your experience in the Sandbox that helped you land your job after working here?
Yeah, I think one of the things.
Any other moments or any other memorable moments working here that you think were useful?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, one of the most useful courses that I took is IT 101. I think that just the introductory knowledge into Excel, how to use Excel effectively is really helpful. And one of the things that I know that a lot of students at Bentley took advantage of learning how to use, you know, whether it's Word, Excel, PowerPoint, that really, when you go into consulting or any type of advisory work, those three apps become your best friend pretty much. So knowing how to utilize those tools effectively is super helpful. And Excel is something that I'm, you know, working on every single day, whether it's, you know, creating graphs, creating tables, you know, analyzing company data, whatever it may be. Just being able to use it effectively is super helpful and saves a lot of time. I've even helped a lot of my peers that kind of had outdated ways of doing things in Excel and taking some of the useful tips and tricks that I learned working with a lot of the students in the Sandbox and make our job a little bit easier.
You'll be pleased to know that IT 101 is being discontinued. And but it's being replaced with a new version called CS 100, which has a working title of solving business problems with information technology.
Nice.
And the course is moving toward same concentration on Excel and web and concepts, but from the perspective of how small businesses can use these technologies.
Yeah, I mean, that's great too. I think that's super applicable to a lot of people. Just being able to, you know, whether it's creating your own small business or you're looking for internships, being able to help smaller firms kind of utilize Excel and databases more effectively is a super helpful skill that could help and grow as you develop in your career, for sure.
Any top 3 Excel skills that people should absolutely know how to do?
Yeah, for sure. Using pivot tables and how to create multiple pivot tables and kind of create dashboards, I think made my job so much easier. Another thing is just, you know, being able to create useful tables instead of just having data all over the place, you know, being able to use references, being able to kind of move data across your table is really helpful. And the last thing I would say, the other thing that I use a lot is just, you know, conditional formatting, things like that. Being able to use those basic skills makes, you know, spotting anomalies a lot easier. spotting like mishaps in, when you have like raw sets of data that companies provide, being able to use conditional formatting to kind of highlight key cells that you want to bring up to companies. Again, those three things I think are super useful when you enter the workforce.
You know, if they chose T, that happens for price.
You guys agree?
Yes. Yeah.
So basically.
What about Tableau? Because I'm learning Tableau now. I'm not sure if you had the experience with it when you're in school.
The prices for the.
I did have experience with Tableau. It wasn't through CIS. It was actually through a science elective called Wind Energy with Professor Cranmer at Bentley, and she kind of created a lot of exercises within Tableau to create a lot of cool dashboards, a lot of cool graphs that we use to answer a lot of our assignments. I think things like Tableau are, again, really helpful. One of my friends actually just landed a job at a data analytics firm in Boston. And he was talking to me about how, since he took that class, he knew how to use Tableau pretty well. It made his, transition into becoming a data analyst a lot easier to create really great dashboards. I think things like that, Power BI, are really helpful tools to have before you go out there into an internship or your first job. Just being able to do that is super helpful. I can talk about using Tableau to kind of create dashboards will make a lot of tedious tasks. If you're running the same report every week, being able to translate that into an Excel dashboard or a Tableau dashboard saves a lot of time and allows you to work on a lot of bigger, higher priority assignments. So yeah, I think it's definitely a good skill to work on.
We just this year started offering a new course, CS 160, which is data-driven decision making, which is a course that includes a lot of Tableau in it as an alternative to the CS 150 Access course. For people
Cool, yeah. I did enjoy the Access course. I think it was helpful, but yeah, I think it's cool to have an alternative like that, especially given how a lot of people are looking to create effective dashboards, using Tableau to do a lot more data analysis and provide some live feedback to stakeholders. So it's cool to have a lot of options here.
What do you think caused the rise in interest in fintech over the past 3, 4, 5 years? I mean, a few years ago, it was a term that nobody ever used, right?
Yeah.
So what happened?
I think it's just, I think it's a combination of people becoming a lot more educated on how to use tech and how it can make their lives easier, and I think fintech specifically, like if you see the rise of, even if something as simple as using Cash App or Venmo, I think is really helpful, right? Being able to send money effortlessly, being able to access your bank effortlessly, I think is huge. And I think a lot of founders saw that there's opportunities to move what things that you traditionally needed to go to your brick and mortar bank for, or have to go to a financial planner for, now you could do on your own. Now you could do through your phone, through a website. I think people really realize that time is money, and taking a lot of the time of doing those tedious tasks such as investing, and making it easier through robo investing, through just setting something up on a website will save you a lot of time. I think people realize that there's a really market for that, especially as the new generation of workers come into the market, that they want to be able to invest easier. They don't want to have to go to their mom or dad's investment professional and have to set something like that up. They could just go on betterment.com and they can put in all their information and have something be spit out, and every month it just comes out of their account and they don't have to think about it. I think that's the ease of use of fintech has really allowed things to step up.
Yes, I just to show a sense of popularity, here's the Google Trends page. Right? So
The money.
clearly something started happening right here,
Is there really a quote?
to show that this is the growth of an industry, that some people have been talking about a little bit, but you're right. I think the tools that and the availability of these new services and these new models of being able to, as you said, pay with your phone and send money anywhere quickly, and do the job of a financial planner yourself by going on their website and using and doing your own retirement planning is something that really wasn't an option even a few years ago.
Yeah, I think and it will just continue to grow, and I think they'll find new ways of providing access to different financial products. Like if you think about it now, there's a lot of products out there that are being developed to kind of bring in all your bills that you pay every month and kind of sort that, and so people have a better understanding of what their finances look like. I think one of the biggest things I think fintech really pushes for is financial literacy, and I think that's really important, especially in America, where I think a lot of people struggle with understanding the basics of financial literacy. And if you look abroad in a lot of emerging markets, providing people those really fundamental understanding of what financial literacy is, financial freedom is, I think is super important. I think a lot of fintechs have that ingrained into their mission, is to make things more accessible to a greater group of people. And so I think that's why a lot of people are even flocking to working at fintechs in general. It's just because a lot of them are mission oriented. And when you work for a firm like that, I think it makes you feel a lot better about the work that you're doing every single day.
Is that what got you there?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it. So like for me as a consultant, being able to work with a lot of mission driven organizations is really cool, because I get to see not only in the fintech space, we work with a lot of consumer companies, we work with a lot of healthcare technology companies. And, you know, one of the key things is like when people really care about a company's mission and what they're doing, I think it really shows in the work that they provide on a daily basis. So, you know, that's one really great thing about fintech is so many of them have an amazing culture, an amazing mission that people are just really drawn to and want to continue to kind of strive and make their products as great as possible.
So I guess the last question would be, would you, like, if you're applying for your job, like, let's say you found it, so what would the title be for the job, and maybe like a few like lines of like a description or something like that?
Yeah, so if you're looking for jobs in fintech, you know, there's a lot of like business analyst roles, financial analyst roles, investment associate roles, operational roles. So looking for roles specifically like that will help you find roles within fintech. I mean, there are a lot of fintech focused job boards too. If you look up online or just Google it, I think there's a few that I can send around to Professor Friedenberg. But one of the key like things that you want to look for in the job description, or just key things that you want to have as you search for fintech roles, is, you know, illustrating that you have a good understanding of the financial markets. If you're going into like an investment focused role for an investment fintech like Robinhood, for example, understand what the financial markets are, some of the intricacies of the role. You know, how are they funding orders? How do they generate money? That's super important. But also just show that you're curious, that you're a problem solver, that, you know, you're not afraid of working through a lot of challenging situations, because when you look at fintechs, they are solving a lot of problems on the fly. So being able to have that kind of problem solving mentality, I think will help you a lot through the interview process and land roles in the fintech space.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What about the insurance industry?
Yeah, I think the insurance industry is really cool too. Again, like one of the things about fintech is now that you can, if you look at like lemonade.com, that's one of the insurance tech companies that are out there. Again, the accessibility of fintech is what really draws people in. I think for one of them, it's like you could pay $5 a month and you could have renter's insurance. Previously, that was something that you would have to go through an insurance broker to get those kind of services, and it wasn't as cheap as $5. You had to pay so much more money to kind of get those kind of services. So I think companies like Lemonade and other insurance technology providers, they just provide a lot of different types of insurance contracts that are out there, which I think consumers are really excited about. Even outside of that, you can look at healthcare insurance, you can look at car insurance. There are a lot of fintech firms that are trying to get into that. But again, I think with some of those companies, it's a little more difficult given the nature of their business, nature of the insurance business. You know, having a strong, legal team is super important there too. So another topic within the ESG space is data privacy and security. So that's another place where I think a lot of Bentley kids that are focused on CIS specifically, I think could have a really great opportunity to enter into fintechs, because if you understand the basics and fundamentals of financial operations, but you also bring in that kind of data focused mentality, if you understand cybersecurity, data privacy, I think those kind of roles are popping up all the time, and is an increasing focus for every company.
I have a question for Nick, who's a student on the other side of the screen with you. I know that you're a finance major and you said you're a data analytics and CIS minor. What finance courses have you taken, and have they actually discussed any of the aspects that you learned today in them?
So far, I've only taken 305, 306, and 307, and they're all pretty like fundamental courses, so they haven't really gotten to like applicable things through like fintech or insurance like that. But the next finance class I take, I definitely want it to be more like real world oriented, instead of just talking about like the basics of it, more like applicable things that kind of I can connect more easier to like everyday life.
Which course is that?
I'm not sure what class that is yet, but I will look at like the course catalog and figure out which one I feel like will best prepare me for a computer science / finance career path, if that's something I choose to take going forward.
Miraj, any advice?
Yeah, I think there is a course that either was experimental last year or the year before, but I think there is an intro to fintech class, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's a great option. I'm sure that it's pretty difficult to get into. That depending on like if you're a junior or senior, you might be able to get into it, but depending on what you're interested in, I think there's a few courses either in the financial markets that could be really interesting. Equity valuation would be really hands-on, real world experience type of course that you could take. Portfolio management is the same way. But if you can, and you're really interested in fintech, I think getting into that fintech course would really, I think it would be interesting for you, given that you're interested in kind of combining your computer science mindset with your interest in finance, for sure.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
So as you know, I've been teaching a lot of Python lately.
Yeah.
If I were to do something in CS 230 to give an assignment that might give some sort of a flavor that would be of interest to students in fintech without that, where they don't need to know a whole lot about finance to do it.
Mhm.
Any suggestions of topics or data sets, or are we already doing something like that but just not calling it the right thing?
Yeah, I think one of the really interesting ways that you guys can do it, I think we'd had this type of project was we got like 5-year returns for I think 3 or 4 stocks, and the assignment was to take that data set and turn them into pie charts, and so like find that 5-year average. I think that could be a really interesting exercise, really introductory, going like, here's how I can source this data, and I can turn it into a price chart, a valuation chart, maybe even spit out some like basic financial metrics that you can just provide, price to earnings, things like that, where it's really simple and it all can be contained in a singular data set, and then be able to change it. So if you have like 5-year returns from Microsoft or 5-year price history for Microsoft, and being able to kind of switch it and say, no, I want to see Starbucks. I think that's a really useful exercise that students can find, that ties in what they've learned in their introductory financial courses, and something that they could use Python to create.
Yeah, we did a couple of years ago. We did this, maybe you had it, where we had you guys evaluate stock values, and then I think last year we enhanced it by actually using a Yahoo service to pull live stock data off the web.
Yeah, I mean, things like that, again, like being able to find like live APIs or different types of data sources that you can pull into pie charts and produce, whether that's charts or reports or tables. I think that'll give students something really hands-on that they could use. If they're investors themselves, like maybe that's something that they could create for the course, but also use in their everyday to day. Maybe there's a stock that they're following or they're interested in a certain type of industry, and they could kind of filter through, a set of tickers. And something that is useful to understand, like how to create something like that in Python, but also have real world use for them on a daily basis.
Cool. Let's go around one more time. Nick, anything else you want to learn about or ask about?
No.
Are you good? Howard?
I'm good.
Good.
I'm one of the career coaches with the undergrad career team, and
Yeah.
I have a question around, and you've certainly answered this in different ways of just like the coursework, or what advice would you give to a student who's trying to break into this field? Apart from classes, I guess, maybe like networking, applying, anything in that realm.
Yeah, for sure. I think networking is key. It's something that obviously the career coaches at Bentley really preach, and something that I did a whole lot of when I was applying for roles, even internships prior to COVID. I think networking is key. I think figuring out what type of industries that you're interested in and targeting companies there, and specifically the hiring managers there, or just people in roles that you foresee yourself working in, I think is super helpful. Even if it doesn't, land a position, I think just having that connection, having that conversation can lead to a lot of a great deal of knowledge. There's a lot of people that, I connected with through LinkedIn just for career opportunities, but now on a daily basis that they like provide a lot of posts that they're posting about things that I'm interested in, just because they're in the field that I wanted to work in while I was studying at Bentley. So I think things like that are really helpful. And just kind of doing things, outside of the classroom, I think is helpful too. Joining extracurricular clubs. For me, it was joining the Sustainable Investment Group on campus. That was super helpful in helping me land my role at ICR. Working at the Sandbox, if you're interested in, being a CS major and working in computer science, obviously that's really helpful. Just doing things outside of the classroom, like you said, is super important because the coursework is great, but being able to apply that in real world situations, I think, helps a lot of candidates kind of differentiate themselves from other college grads.
And a follow-up question just around how did you discover that this was what you wanted to do, or did you always know?
No, I didn't always know. I thought I was just going to be, a traditional Bentley student, major in finance and go work at an investment firm or something along the lines of finance. I didn't really see myself combining my interest my interest in finance and sustainability until much later, until I kind of got on campus and I took some of those science courses. And I was like, oh, there's a way for me to combine my passion for sustainability and my interest in finance. So I think one thing is just like always keep your mind open. There's a lot of different avenues to pursue, your major here at Bentley. So always look for things that you're interested in. And for me, it was through, taking an oceanography course, which led me to meet my LSM advisor, whose wife worked in ESG, and kind of learning about what ESG was. And then obviously the last 2 years, ESG has become like one of the hottest topics in the investment world. So finding a consulting firm that focused on that was super important and really helpful in my development too.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Cool. Well, thank you. Any last words or advice before we stop that you want to share that you didn't get to that you hope we would have asked you?
Yeah, no, I think if there's any advice that I could offer is just to, always kind of go find ways to take things that you're learning in the classroom and apply to real world situations. I think that's the way that you get the most out of it. Like I said, whether it's through joining a club on campus or finding internships that are related to the work that you're interested in, I think whatever you can do to kind of get a hands-on experience that way, even if it's personal projects, is super useful and allows you to kind of not only understand the topics that you're interested in a little bit better, but also be able to talk about that as you look to get internships or full-time roles in the future.
Thank you. It's great to have you back here. One of the best parts about doing this every week is that we've been able to connect with student, former tutors who've been working here, who were here in years past, and it's good. And especially when we can't have you in person, it's great to have you on our, I don't know if you can see, but you're like on the big screen.
That's nice.
Andre, you can move the camera around or
I
something.
don't think you'll be able to see it.
So you can sort of see what. Not there.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, you're like way up on the screen there. So that's been awesome. Next week, we're on spring break. And then the week after that, we come back with Jake Barrison. There he is. Jake is now at VMware, and he's going to talk about data security and privacy. So that is online after spring break. And then other speakers after spring break include Nick Maloney, who's from the GNAR, is going to talk about web frameworks that people should know about. And we also have coming in April, Brian Shield from the Boston Red Sox, who is the CIO of the Red Sox, who's going to talk about how the Red Sox use technology or something like that. So come on back on successive Tuesdays and on successive Wednesdays. And thanks for being here today.